Michelle Graves, your host on today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm glad to have you here. Now, at The Power of Money, we are interested in three things happening. First, we want you to get the necessary education so that you and your family can make the decisions that will impact positively on you in your financial life. The second thing is that you be empowered to prosper. I only want the best for you. And you can only get that if you have education and then the drive to make it happen. And the third thing that is so important to me is that you recognize that life is more than a journey and that you be energized so that you can begin to participate in the truly joyous experience of living. So here's to empowerment, here's to education, and here's to energy. I'm Michelle Graves, your host, Power of Money, and here we go. And welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money with Michelle Graves, your host, affectionately known for the last 40 years throughout the United States of America as the Money Lady. And I thank all of you for allowing me the distinct privilege of coming into your lives, into your households via television or YouTube or whatever venue you're watching it on. I just welcome you today to today's segment. And I have an extraordinary segment for you. You'll want to listen to it in its entirety because it's so rich in information. My guest today is Dr. Stefeni A. Stallworth. She is a Ph.D. In educational studies from the University of Cincinnati and has spent over 25 years in the educational industry venue, working with youth, for-profit, nonprofit, and I am especially interested in hearing her perspective on what is happening today in terms of education, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and what are things that we need to be aware of as a culture that is quickly moving into technology and all kinds of things that I don't even know about. But my point is, as I've told you all over the years, I don't have to know everything. I just need to know how to get people that know on the air and have them to share. She is an extremely vibrant and dynamic woman, and I am looking forward to this interview, and I'm sure you will as well. So let us get started. She's coming in by way of Zoom to the station, and I'd like to get her on the air if I could. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm excellent. I wouldn't have it any other way, Dr. Stallworth. Where do we want to begin? Let's start with you sharing with our viewers and listeners who you are and your background and what makes you a guru, so to speak, in the area of education and educational studies. So let us begin.
Okay. My name is Stefeni Stallworth. Stefeni Stallworth, Ph.D. I earned my Ph.D. in Educational Studies from the University of Cincinnati in June of 2008. I've been in the field of higher education for approximately 25 years, and that has been both on the administrative side of things, just running programs, being a chair of a department, and also on the academic side of things where I've been a faculty, an adjunct faculty, and have worked as a consultant in various capacities. I was educated undergrad at Fisk University at HBCU. I then got my master's in African Studies from the Ohio State University in 1998. And then I got my doctorate from UC in June of 2008. I'm getting older.
That's okay.
So what other things have I done in education?
Yeah, I'd
I've
like
worked
you
with
to
young
talk about that.
people. I have not been in a K through 12 classroom, but I have done K through 12 programming where I've run after school programming, designed programming for young people to be engaged. I've managed some programs, some collaborations. One in particular was at the Melrose Y, which was a collaborative effort between the Melrose Y, the Williams Y, and what it was called the '06 Alliance at that time in
Okay, now these are
Cincinnati.
all places in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because this show is national, so I want to make sure we know that.
Oh,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
okay, so continue.
So I enjoy working in higher ed in particular, which is what I currently do. I'm currently a program manager of TRIO Student Support Services at Cincinnati State. That program is one of the several TRIO programs around the country. We're federally funded. We have to apply for a grant and receive it. Student Support Services, our job is primarily to help students navigate their way through their college experience and complete their graduation goals. So it is very much a joyous position. I get to help people for a living. I get paid to do that. And I enjoy my work currently.
Well, clearly, this trio thing sounds extremely interesting to me. Is that specific to the college that you are currently working at as program manager, or is this a national program?
TRIO is a national program. In fact, it was signed into legislation in 1966 by Lyndon Johnson. And the
Wow.
first TRIO program was Upward Bound. So most people have
Okay.
heard of Upward Bound, and that deals with young people prior to graduating high school. Student Support Services, which is a program that I run, is for college students. And then there is the McNair Scholars Program that is for graduate students. So the idea is that TRIO can take you from elementary to graduate school.
That
And
is
so,
that is amazing, and that is goes back to 1966.
yes, ma'am. The year
Wow.
after the Civil Rights Act was passed. So Mr. Johnson, that was one of his, I think, finer pieces of legislation, along with the Civil Rights Act, of course.
Right. Well, he's an interesting president because he is the one that really pushed hard and facilitated Medicare for seniors. So he was extremely involved in making sure that seniors were not bankrupt from their health expenses through that program, which still is in existence. And now we have you talking about TRIO, which sets a path for young people. Is it African Americans or is it all young people?
It is young people. The qualifications are, the criteria are that you are either first generation, which means neither of your parents graduated from college or your guardian didn't graduate from college. The second qualifier potentially is income. So your income has to be beneath a certain threshold as defined by the federal government, or you could have a special need, or what we like to call a disability.
Okay.
So, or some
Okay.
combination thereof.
So help me to understand. So the criteria are not racially specific. However, they are income driven, they are family history driven, and they can assist in getting a child money for college or just helping them to set up goals and objectives.
So ideally, when they come into our program, our job is to help them set goals, to help them meet their graduation goals. However, we do offer money for students who are Pell eligible, oftentimes in the form of a scholarship or a grant that they can get for up to 2 years at $1,000 per year.
Okay, so that can complement any other scholarships and grant monies that they have received. Is that how that works?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Also, TRIO programs are bipartisan funded, or bipartisan supported. So, for example, I went to a conference in DC in April where we're trying to garner the goal for TRIO programs this year is that we're trying to get $174 million dollars to fund or finance or support 1 million TRIO students around the country. And it is supported by the president. It is supported by Republicans. And in specific, I believe Senator Collins was our speaker. And then it's also supported by the Department of Education secretary, whose wife was a TRIO grad. She did
Oh,
Upward Bound.
wonderful. That is wonderful.
So
So, this federal money that you are right now trying to push to get, will this provide any additional monies beyond the $1,000 a year for this for support for the students on a financial basis, or will it be in programs and other types of things?
So I believe that if we get the money and they allocate it, we'll have a bigger budget, so we may be able to assist more students. I'm not sure how the funds are going to be allocated, but I think that programs that are already in existence will get additional monies. So that
That
should allow us to help more additional people
that is
immediately.
very powerful, because if we do not lay a foundation for this generation of young people, we are in trouble. We are in trouble.
Yes.
I have observed and listened to our young people intensely, and with intention, because at the point they don't feel that education in many circumstances is even worth the debt, worth the headache, worth all of the investment of time and resources, we have a potential problem on our hands. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think that the cost of education is going up.
Yep.
Unfortunately, financial aid isn't growing at the same pace as tuition. So I think it is a decision that students have to make, or students and their parents have to make, around whether or not they think education is the best investment for them. Because I don't think there are as many sort of free monies out there. So you will have to pay for your education, but I think they have to look at it as an investment as well. And obviously, if you get your education, what you're going for, you get a better job, or you're able to access more money streams, then that'll help you. So I
So
think
my,
it is
my, my
a good idea
question,
to go to college.
Dr. Stallworth, my question as a financial professional is a simple one. What is a return on investment for education? And is it delineated by specific degrees? Like some degrees would be more compatible with this emerging economy that we have, where the emphasis is on technology, artificial intelligence. Where do our young people need to be putting their resources to get a positive return?
So I would say what's really popular right now are the STEM fields. And
Yep.
STEM is the acronym that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. But there's also something called STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So I think that those are the areas, like, technology areas, where I think it's going to be lucrative for students. But I do recommend that students choose a major that will make them money, but also something that they enjoy. Because I think you have to endure the educational experience and meet your goals. So I don't suggest that people just go for money, particularly if you're not loving school. You probably should do something that you like that can make you money as well. So I don't think it should be strictly money driven, although we do like money. Most people like money.
Yes, it
Um,
enables you to eat.
yes, and so I do think with something like TRIO, Student Support Services, our job is to help students kind of overcome their fears and navigate their way through to meet their graduation goals. So I do think that a lot of students, a lot of Americans in particular, students of color and low income students, they find science, technology, and math to be difficult. And so a lot of times they're defeated before they can get started. They just say it's hard and they don't necessarily want to do it, but they like money. So I'd say it needs to be a combination of something that you can work towards and reach, which there are programs like TRIO, Student Support Services, to assist you, but also something that you enjoy a bit, because it's going to be hard to do something that you don't enjoy for like a
Oh, for a long
lifetime or
time.
a
Yeah.
career.
Well, I will say, because I loved biology, I loved math, I loved physics as a child, and I think that a lot of that attitude and fear comes from the lack of exposure, perhaps when you're younger, or involvement with people that are doing this professionally. So the assumption is that math is hard. But if you can put it in a historical context, particularly from African descent children, that the great universities in Africa and Egypt, Timbuktu, that they had scientists and physics and astronomers and great men and women who did this. Is there any kind of program that would enable them to get culturally caught up so that they could begin to look at these types of disciplines with less prejudice?
Well, on a personal level, I encourage those kinds of things. Not any
Yeah.
type of program that I know of at the moment, but I think that that's the opportunity that I have, or even you, or even any professional that isn't afraid of math, science, technology, to encourage young people and to make them aware of their cultural background. Because I don't think that they know that. They don't know that, African
Oh,
people have contributed to the world's accomplishments throughout history, throughout time. And
thousands
so,
of years. I mean,
yes, ma'am.
the evidence is clear and documented, but again, I think that perhaps as young people are, because they are young, and where they get information and data today is just very, very unclear. I mean, I know that you can easily access this, but I was approaching this from a perspective of if they're fearful of the sciences and of math and of engineering and biochemistry and chemistry, all those things that are foundational to understanding discipline and order. And so I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I certainly think that mentors would be very helpful, right? In terms of meeting professionals who look like you, who do these things that have been deemed difficult. I think those will also be the people that can help us guide the students in terms of tutoring and making these concepts maybe simpler than the textbooks today, because they're certainly different than the textbooks that I grew up learning from. In
Yes.
fact, I'm not even sure that they use textbooks everywhere. Sometimes it's like a handout. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that with encouragement and really accomplishment for the student, that will build their confidence. And I think that word of mouth from peers is very powerful. So
I
I
totally
think
agree.
assisting students in meeting those goals or helping them be less afraid of the sciences will empower them to be confident to take more classes like that, and also word of mouth to tell their peers that it can be done, or to show them that it can be done because they're doing it.
Well, I know I'm excited because one of my, precious, precious male sons, not birth sons, but I love him like he was. But at 31, he finally completed his degree in engineering. And that has been a long road because of financial challenges, etc. But I had told him as a child, because he used to draw roller coasters. And I happen to love roller coasters. I mean, I am a fiend when it comes to roller coasters. And I told him, I said, you are incredibly gifted and you need to do engineering. And he did it. He's done it. And I told him, well, your next step is to relocate to Japan and learn how to build roller coasters, and make sure you let me know so that I can find one that you've designed. But that was a long journey. Do you find that to be the case with so many of our young people today?
I do find that to be the case, particularly at Cincinnati State. Probably our median age is around 27.
Oh
Of
my
course,
goodness.
it ranges from 18 beyond, right? But the average age, or the median age, is 27. So what I think is good about that potentially is that maybe a student will have a better grip on what they want to do and be better prepared to be successful. Because what I've seen in the past is that, if you're doing your education for someone else, it requires you to kind of have a commitment for yourself. So I
Yes.
think at 27, students probably have lived enough in poverty in their minds, and they want to do something different, and they come prepared to kind of be successful.
Well,
Now, the
that is
only difference
encouraging.
is with a 27-year-old versus an 18-year-old is an 18-year-old is just coming out of high school. So at
Oh,
27, you've been out of school for a few years. So although you may have the drive, you may need to be assisted in getting in the swing of academic life. But I
I'm
certainly think that they're more motivated.
I think that's very, very interesting, and I think that you've hit on something that's quite powerful, which is the whole notion of how we educate our children, and that when you do come out of high school, your level of maturity with regard to work skills and placement and majors. I talked to a young lady and asked her, what did she want to do? And she said, I want to major in English. And I said, okay, and what's your minor? If you're going to have English as a major, then what are you going to take another language or multilingual so that you can be able to use that as a platform? And at 18, she didn't have a clue. She didn't know anything. She was like, well, I'm real good in English. I said, well, that is our native language here. Give me a little bit more. Give me some more. And I'm sure that once she gets into this scenario of learning multiple languages, she is going to be challenged. She's going to be forced to be disciplined and not so haphazard with regard to how she proceeds with her education. What do you think about that?
Well, I certainly think in life, there's a saying, if you fail to plan to fail. So I
Yep,
think a plan is always good. Unfortunately, young people at 18 or even 22, they don't always know exactly what they want to do, right? So my two best examples of people that are extremely successful in their fields, although it is not education, are Beyonce and Derek Jeter. They were both at the top of their game. But the thing that they had in common was that their parents supported their goals and they knew what they wanted to do at 9 years old. Most
that's
people don't know what they want
amazing.
to do at nine. But can you imagine wanting to do something at 9 years old, like Derek Jeter wanted to be a baseball player, and that he stuck to that, and that made him really at the top of his game. So I think that young people change their minds a lot. They're not always so focused. But I think that my philosophy and my experience has shown that um, in something like student support services or even heralding or supporting students, you kind of have to support them until till the light bulb goes on, is what I say. And when it goes on, it like kind of clicks on and then they get it. But each person's light bulb kind of comes on at different times. But spiritually speaking, I feel like things work themselves out when students are working hard and they're being supported. So I think it's better if you know exactly what you want to do, but I also think that that's rare.
So let
So
me ask you this issue, because one of the real key things I'm zooming in on, given what is happening in the marketplace today, and the millennials and the Xers and all these groups that are kind of coalescing with each other with very little parental involvement, meaning the parents are just, you don't see the parents around. Is it because it's not fashionable today for parents to be up in their stuff in terms of goals and objectives? I know with my kids, they were like, oh, my mom was just, oh, we didn't have to go to military school because our mother was a military woman. Not so, but I was very, very crisp about, you don't have time to waste like that. You got to figure out what you want to do, and then you got to do it. And then if it doesn't work out, you're young enough to blow yourself up even and regroup and do something else. But what are your thoughts about parental involvement, and what does that look like?
well, I think parental involvement at best, I mean, when a person is doing their best, their parents are typically involved and they're
Okay.
driving their students' motivation. They've kind of taught them these things from childhood and they're kind of reinforcing them, making sure they're taking certain kinds of classes. Because when you get to college, you want to be prepared. And oftentimes, depending on what high school you went to, for myself, I went to Princeton High School, which is a public high school in Cincinnati and a very good public
A
school.
very
But
good
all
public
public schools
school.
are not
Right.
great.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
right.
um, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
So I would say that when parents are involved and they're guiding their young person or they've kind of instilled these values, then the student catches on. But that's a fortunate situation or most fortunate situation because there are tons of children or young people out there that don't have that parental guidance. And I think it's our job as a society, or my job in particular, to assist these young people in figuring out what they want to do. So of course, if you have a plan on the front end and you know exactly what you're going to do, that works better. But, sometimes we don't have that and we still want young people to be successful. And I don't think they can give up because they don't think that they have a certain kind of support from their parents. And then sometimes I think young people lead their parents, just meaning that they show them how a thing is done. If your parent doesn't have a vision, they may or may not be on point with your goals for yourself. So if you come from a family that isn't highly educated, you can show your parents and you can show your family by what you do in being successful. So
That
I
is
don't think
very,
that it
that's very,
ends with your parents' support. It's obviously ideal if they're doing that, but then you can still be successful with the assistance of others. And I do believe it takes a village. So you have resources in your community, you have role models. It's great if you have parents that do that, but unfortunately, every parent does not. And we still want these young people to be successful for society's sake, really, because I'm going to get old one day and I'd like to get the right dosage of medication if I'm getting a shot
exactly.
or something like that. So,
Yes, that would be nice. I am challenged given the things I'm seeing today. Again, because I think that lack of parental involvement is multi generational in so many cases. I mean, poverty transfers. And when a child grows up not having their needs met, being categorized as a failure, or in a family that's dysfunctional or absence of complete families as we define them, it's very challenging to look at adulthood and responsibility and accountability because you don't have a model before you. So, what are your thoughts, and particularly your organization with this trios? How do you intercept those type of dynamics? Because that is real, Dr. Stallworth. That is real.
yes, ma'am, it is. And so, one of the difficulties of my job is really keeping students on task, right? And so there are a couple of regulations or things that a student, or what I want to say, objectives that students must meet, for example, to get financial aid. So to get financial aid, you have to have at least a 2.0 or maintain a 2.0, but you also have to complete 70% of the courses that you take. And that's a little bit different now than it was maybe when I was an undergrad. So I called it gaminess. Back then, you could register for classes, you could get a refund before classes started. And what was happening was that students were getting their refunds, but they weren't taking their education seriously. And so schools were having to pay that money back to the government.
Ooh,
So
ooh.
now they don't even have that. You don't even get a refund before the semester or quarter starts. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that they would be wasting the money taking classes more than one time, two and three times.
What?
And so I think that was a
Oh,
question of ethics. So that's why you don't see as many university colleges or those kinds of areas at four-year institutions or even two-year institution where they're taking remedial courses that aren't counting for credit, but they're paying for them and those kinds of things. So I think it is going to be better for them to be prepared to be successful or to help students get beyond the remedial level and also make the most usage of the money that they spend. So you want them to be successful in the courses that they're taking. But one of the things that you get penalized for these days is that you have to complete 70% of the classes that you register for. So at some point, you may be in trouble with financial aid if you're not meeting that goal.
so what?
So
So may I interrupt? You've given me new information, and it's always about new information. So students today, if they register for a class and they have to pay for the class, and the monies are not refundable, period. Once you enroll, bam, you're there. And they,
well, the
yes?
monies are refundable to them, but they want to make maximum usage of the funds that they're spending. So you want to complete the classes that you're taking. Because if you're not completing them, number one, you're wasting that money. And then number two, if you don't complete enough of the classes that you register for, you will be in trouble with financial aid. It's called satisfactory academic progress. So you have to complete a certain percentage of courses that you're taking.
So is it a better plan to take courses that you are fundamental basic and not overload yourself, but take courses at a pace that will allow you to complete them satisfactorily? Is that an
I would
objective?
I would say yes, that is true, particularly for classes in your major.
Okay,
Fortunately or unfortunately, if you are in a developmental class, you're paying for that class. The idea is that it's going to help you reach your skill level where you can be successful in the sort of regular class, so to speak. So sometimes these developmental classes, they are helpful in that they're giving you time to practice and develop your skills. But students may not feel like they're that helpful because you're paying for them and you're not getting credit for the class.
oh wow. Okay, so that remedial aspect is still, they have to pay, but it does not add toward their graduation credit. But it does prepare them to pass their classes that they do need successfully. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And
Okay,
so the one aspect that I have kind of left out, but you can't leave it out, is a student's determination and their drive. So I
okay,
think
let's
that
talk about that.
that's very important as well,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Because I think that if you believe you can do a thing and you're willing to work at it and you have assistance, I think you can meet your goals, right?
I do
So
agree.
and so I think that, we start on different levels, right? So you could be a remedial student, you could be a high school dropout. So, for example, at Cincinnati State, we have open enrollment, which means if you have a high school equivalent, which is a high school diploma or a GED, then you'll be admitted. So we have places that you can come, like Cincinnati State, where you can get yourself prepared just depending on your drive, right? And,
Okay,
I think that there are plenty of people here to help you, such as myself and others in similar roles around the college. But even at UC, they have similar programs, similar people to assist you. So there are a lot of student support services in terms of helping students meet their goals, right? But they have to be driven as well because you can't be what do I want to say? Your confidence can't be low. Maybe you
right.
might start out like that, but of course, as you complete your classes and you're successful, that builds your confidence. And I think it does take a certain level of confidence and drive to meet your goals. And
So
you
let me
can't
ask
take no for an answer, in my opinion.
let me ask you a question, and that is that Cincinnati State, as I understand it, is a 2-year college, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At the end of 2 years, do they go to the University of Cincinnati or another university that's a 4-year? Is that how that picks
So
up?
so technically, that's part of my job too, to help you meet your graduation goals or to transfer to a four-year institution if you would like. And technically, the government actually gives you 4 years to complete your 2-year degree.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
ideally, you could get that 2-year degree, your associates, in 2 years and then transfer, but you can get money up to 4 years to transfer.
That's very generous, I think.
Well, I think that for students, they don't like it as much because in their mind, it's a 2-year institution and they want to get it done in 2 years. But it'll depend on where you're located in terms of your skill sets and what your major is.
Right,
So,
like, right,
and your drive. So,
right.
I think it's all doable and attainable, but it'll be contingent on what the student's motivation is.
Okay, it all gets down though to the student and accountability for their drive. And we can coach and we can encourage and we can inspire, but they ultimately are the only people that can move themselves. They have to want to get it
Yes,
and they
ma'am.
can't
And
play with it.
so, yes. And so this is also where I think parents are important, but at the end of the day, they can't do it for you either. You have to be driven for yourself. Now, ideally, those things are instilled in you, but you can still make it because it's about you and what you're willing to do for yourself.
So as we look at this chaos that is out here today, where you've got young people that went the college route and cannot get decent jobs other than telephone banks and very low-level skills. What is your assessment? Where are we headed?
So, what I would say is that I think that education is there to get if you're driven, right? But I'd also say I think it's maybe more difficult in the sense that there's an apathetic attitude about education. People aren't sure whether or not it's going to pay out for them. So, what I like to say as an educator is I like to empower you to be able to think for yourself and to take your skills and make your dreams a reality. So everyone's not going to be an engineering major or computer science major, although those are good majors. I think that entrepreneurship can be a good path
It
because,
can be.
people, I think now there are more entrepreneurs than ever. And I think also with technology, you can cut out the middleman in a lot of ways. So, for example, if you like make music, now you can make your own kind of music and post it on your site and have people listening to your music without necessarily a record label. So
Right.
there are newer ways to do things that are is very different than my time and probably your time
Yes.
that empower students. So if they're driven around that, so I mean, I know that we don't like all of these things like TikTok but there are young people, they're figuring out how they can insert themselves financially and make some money.
Well,
So
I'm
they have
not,
other options that we didn't have.
right,
Um,
right. I mean, right. I watch TikTok. My daughter told me she's in the entertainment business, been forever, and she opened up my eyes to that whole industry, which just kind of blew me away because I had no idea. I had no idea it worked like that. I really didn't. And she said, "Well, Mom, you're a banker, and you need to know the music industry is about a big fat bank running everybody's stuff." And she said, "And nobody likes it, and it's going to be a change." And lo and behold, Prince got into it, Michael J. got into it, and we are on a different trajectory today, which I think is needed and more to come. That's one industry. But
yes, that's
we've got,
exciting too,
I
actually, because it
mean,
gives students some opportunities, right?
it's so exciting to me to see that happening, and I encourage young people to look at their own industries. Certainly, in my industry, in the financial services industry, and insurance and investments and stuff, something has got to change. Other than old white men going to Florida to retire in Naples. Something has, on a fundamental basis, got to change so that young people are inspired to come into that industry with an understanding that they can empower people to change their lives. I mean, that is not something that is pushed, but it is something that has to be done because of the compensation. Highest paid people are in my industry, change lives, know a lot. But I'm excited about that as well. So, on a self-centered perspective, are there any programs that would route young people into my industry?
Well, people love money, so they
Yeah,
would
they
probably be routed
do.
there by themselves. I mean, so the people that are driven around money and want to know how to make it and how to get it, I think that it kind of is self-promoting, right?
Okay.
Because most Americans like money. And so some people are just more determined than others. So I think that it still goes back to the personal drive of the
Uh-huh.
individual, but it's certainly there to be made,
Well, I would
right?
have
And
to
so you see
agree.
people doing that, and
Yeah.
so it's like, you make something up in your mind, you're saying, I want that thing.
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
that goes back to the person's personal drive, where parents can be important, but you can just say, hey, I come from nothing, but I want something, and I'm going to go about getting it.
And I like that because that's what it's going to take for where our society is moving, is people that have a commitment and a drive for themselves to do better and to be able to be contributors to the positive well-being of humans, not just their families, but humankind all over the world. People want to do better, and young people are taking the lead. And I am personally gratified to see that, particularly on climate change and all the things that are happening, that they are now going to have to pick up the gauntlet and run with it. It's scary when you realize that we have left them all of this. But I also feel, Dr. Stallworth, that it gives me great hope to know that they have the vision and the determination, not all of them, but you deal with enough of them that I can say that fairly confidently, that I'm not afraid of them leading. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the leaders are going to lead, right? And the people who are
Yes,
driven are going to be that. They're going to be the leaders. They're going to be in the forefront. They're going to be leading by example. Now, what I would like them to know more about is their own culture and also what's going on in the world. Because I don't think it's just about money. Like if
not
you
at
have
all.
just money and you don't have any thoughts in your head or you don't know what's going on in the world, you can have money and you can lose money. You know, they say easy come, easy go. Not
Yeah,
that it's ever that easy, but so I think that you have to be aware of what's going on around you. And unfortunately, I think that how you're socialized or what's happening in the time where you're growing up influences a lot of what your understanding is,
I
right?
totally, I
So,
totally get that. I'm a keynoter this weekend coming up on this whole issue dealing with families and women and how to begin to break the cycle, because money is not going to give you emotional health. Money, money is not going to keep you from going ping pong. And young people are out here. They're dealing with challenges and issues that we have no clue, because we don't know from whence they came, their DNA, their backgrounds. All these things are upon us right now. And I just think that with awareness and information, if people are willing, and that's the big question mark, are you willing to change in the face of change? Are you willing to go in a cave and think that it's all going to work out? Because right now, I don't think so. So again, I appreciate what you're saying. But I'd like to talk about something that you shared with me, and I found it to be fascinating. And that is the fact that you are of Japanese heritage. And that was just remarkable to me to know your story. Would you mind sharing bits of it?
no, I do not mind. In fact, I was very pleased to meet you and you give me the information around the Black generals or about around the Anu people in Japan. So,
Yes.
so my background is that my father is African American and Japanese, and my mother was African American. I recently met my father at age 51 a few years ago, and that was on my bucket list just to meet him. I'm wanting to maybe have a stronger relationship. I'm not sure where that is going, but my father is actually a military general, United States. He was, became a general in the United States, but there was a time when he was the leading officer of armed forces in Japan for the U.S. So
Wow.
he's of African descent, or again, African and Japanese, but it was really interesting to find that information on the Anu people who were heralded as or recognized, excuse me, as an indigenous people of Japan. They are clearly of African descent.
Yes.
They're brown people. And so it's interesting that it took Japan until 2008 to recognize them as indigenous people, because I think many people don't know that there are brown people in Asian countries, but we are
Yes.
everywhere, and have been a part of things. They fought wars. In fact, I believe it was in 1907 that they defeated the Russians
Yes.
in war. So
Yes.
that's exciting because I think that there's some resilience around African people no matter where we are, number one. Number two, we often go unrecognized in terms of our contributions to society and the world. And I think that those kinds of pieces of information also empower people of African descent to do well when they know where they come from. And so it seems that there was some racism in Japan, not even wanting to recognize these people. And then from what I read on them, they have been pushed. They live at the northernmost island in Japan, and throughout history, they've been kind of pushed in that direction. They have some African qualities in their culture because they did not write, they don't have a written language. So they
Huh.
weren't able to document themselves in ways that Europeans have kind of taught us, which is on paper.
Right.
Oftentimes we have oral traditions, and the Anu people had oral traditions too. And so they pass their language on and their traditions on to their children verbally. And I recognize that there's a value system around how you do things, which is, I think, why we love Egypt so much. I think Egypt was great, but it was not the only African society. But
Not at all.
they did write things down on that papyrus, and that allowed them to live beyond maybe beyond certain other groups that didn't write things down or that got annihilated or their histories were destroyed when libraries were burned and things like that. So it's really interesting to know. And it's also interesting to know that, again, African people have been contributing to the world since its inception. I would
Yes.
say they are the first people on the planet. So a lot of things came out of Africa, and we're not recognized for that. We don't get credit for that. And I think it's the same with the Anu people, that this racism kind of inhibits us, and it presents a false narrative, and also it's just not factual.
No,
Right.
it's
So
not.
we don't
It's
have
not
to
factual.
go far to recognize that we've contributed to the world
Right,
throughout history.
right, right. Well, I appreciate the ability, or I just say the setting that allowed me to share with you about your father's people, because the Anu people were ferocious military people. And the fact that they, in 1907, destroyed the Russian army, wish they were around today. but
Well,
but
yeah.
yeah, because we got a mess um, over there. But again, the fact that these snippets are coming out, and certainly when I lived in China, the most shocking thing for me, Dr. Stallworth, was finding people in China, mainland China, who were of African descent, women with large derrieres and noses and all the above, and looked like me. And I was like, how did this happen? What is going on here? And that's when I began to research and study the impact of the African in Asia, from India, Vietnam, Korea. I mean, all these black men that were seafaring and landfaring men and settled and had families, and here we go. So that was just simply insightful and precious to me. And it was just a delight to see your face when I shared with you that information and you took off running. So I want to thank you for the outcome of that, because that was a God thing. That's all I can say to you. I was like, what? You're kidding me. And when we see these things, people have to today, the challenge today is the information is there if you're willing to go after it and to change your assumptions about the balance of power, because I'm sorry, 400 years of European hegemony is not like 5,000 years of world events. The world is a big place. And
It's been around for a long time as well.
oh
And
yeah,
so I think that those are some of the things that, we have to think about. So when you think about the United States of America, we're really a young country,
oh my gosh,
right?
no, we're a baby. We still in diapers. We still
So
in
for all the
diapers.
havoc that we wreak on the world in a way. And of course, we make our contribution to the world as well, but I think we could be better at it. And so to me, that's part of my responsibility as an American citizen, is to force us to be better and to live up to the rhetoric that we speak around our documents like the Constitution or
Right.
around equality and things like that. So this might be digressing, but I think it's also interesting, again, going back to when you're socialized, because this whole Roe versus Wade piece, that
Whew.
is going to impact young people, young ladies in particular, and it's going to make their choices maybe different than I ever imagined that I would have to make, right? Because, you know, Roe versus Wade existed in my time,
Well,
but I
Roe,
wonder how
Roe,
that's going to influence our society and how, or potentially influence. So hopefully it doesn't get reversed. But I think that since its inception, 1973, they've been trying to reverse it since we got it.
right.
So,
Well, I
so
tell
I think
you
that it'll
that
be
Roe,
interesting to see what the world looks like, because I think for women,
huh.
it might throw us back into the quote unquote dark ages of sorts.
Well, I'm
But
going to
it
tell you
certainly limits
this,
those options, right?
Dr. Stallworth, our time is wrapping up. If a student wants to call you, can you give me a telephone number?
Sure. They can reach me directly. My number is 513-569-4797.
Would you say that just one more time?
Yes, ma'am. 513-569-4797.
I appreciate your contribution today on this television broadcast, and you're sharing your expertise with young people, and we were able to get into some things that I am very, very excited about. I don't even want to talk about Roe versus Wade
That's a
because
whole nother show, huh?
I was in college and it was illegal. That's how old I am. We didn't have a Roe versus Wade, and I'm going to tell you that the things that happened are unspeakable. And all I can say is that we're going to watch this whole piece carefully. We are going to watch this whole piece carefully. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for honoring me with your presence and with your insights. And I send you love and best wishes with your father and that whole healing that has to take place, and an embracing of your Japanese heritage, which is rich, rich, rich. And we'll look forward to talking soon. I just so
Thank you so much
appreciate
for
you.
having me as well. And I
Oh, not
appreciate
at
this
all.
opportunity to
Not at
speak with
all.
you.
You thank good. And for all of you that are listening in today, I have been interviewing Dr. Stefeni A. Stallworth, who is program manager of the TOPS program at Cincinnati State, the TRIO program, I'm sorry, at Cincinnati State in Cincinnati, Ohio. 25 years in the educational arena, committed to working with young people so that we can be the benefactors of a much better world. Thank you all for listening in. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.